Judges 19. We are going to jump right in, but first we're not touching this anymore. We're past this little roadmap, but it's kind of nice to see the judges. Now we're past this. We're into the area where there are no more judges until 1 Samuel when they get a king. And it kind of sets the tone for Israel and the lawlessness and the unrighteousness and just the sorry state that happens to the nation of the people of God. So, again, it's good to look back at, but it's not helpful to us today. So, Judges 19, 30 verses. Little kind of side note here. The closing section of Judges, like 17, 18, 19, 20, all the way through when the judges are no more, are probably the most graphic show of lawlessness that exists before the coming monarchy in 1 Samuel. And it also shows a really negative light to certain tribes of Israel for reasons, okay? It's not just unjustified, it's there for reasons, okay? So, with that being said, there's your warning. Section 1, verses 1 through, I've got 20 on here, it's 1 through 15. It's called a Levite getting his wife. So it says this, and it came to pass in those days when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite sojourning on the side of Mount Ephraim, who took to him a concubine out of Bethlehem, Judah. And his concubine played the whore against him, and went away from him unto her father's house to Bethlehem, Judah, and was there 4 whole months. You good there?
Yeah.
Already laughing?
No.
Terrible. Okay. And her husband arose and went after her to speak friendly unto her, and to bring her in, having a servant with him and a couple of asses, and she brought him into her father's house. And when the father of the damsel saw him, he rejoiced to meet him. And his father-in-law, the damsel's father, retained him, and he abode with him 3 days. So they did eat and drink and lodged there. And it came to pass on the 4th day, when they arose early in the morning, that he rose up to depart. The damsel's father said unto his son-in-law, Comfort thine heart with a morsel of bread, and afterwards go on your way. And they sat down, they ate, and they drank, both of them together. For the damsel's father had said unto the man, Be content, I pray thee, and tarry all night, and let thine heart be merry. And when the man rose up to depart, his father-in-law urged him, therefore he lodged there again. And he rose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart, and the damsel's father said, Comfort thine heart, I pray thee. And they tarried until afternoon, and they did eat both of them. And when the man rose up to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, the father-in-law, the damsel's father, said unto him, Behold, now the day draweth near towards evening. I pray you tarry all night. Behold, the day groweth to an end. Lodge here, that mine heart may be merry, and tomorrow get you early on your way, that thou mayest go home. But the man would not tarry that night. But he rose up and departed, and came over against Jebus, which is Jerusalem, and there were with him 2 asses saddled, and his concubine was also with him. And when they were there by Jebus, this day was far spent, and the servant said unto his master, Come, I pray thee, and let us turn into the city of the Jebusites, and lodge in it. And his master said unto him, We will not turn aside hither into the city of stranger, that is not of the children of Israel. We will pass over to Gibeah. And he said unto his servant, Come and let us draw near to one of these places to lodge all night, in Gibeah or in Ramah. And they passed on and went their way, and the sun went down upon them when they were by Gibeah, which belongeth to Benjamin. Verse 15, And they turned aside thither to go in and to lodge in Gibeah. And he went in, he sat down in a street of the city, for there was no man that took them into his house to lodging. Pretty easy so far. Good chapter. Nice job, okay? There is anarchy. There's a little bit of craziness. There's a lot of an episode of craziness coming up that's going to happen to the Israelites, revealing again what happens when there is no ruler, when there's no king, and there's also no desire to follow God. And you've got to think about that when we look at the first verse, when it says, And it came to pass in those days when there was no king in Israel. There was no king in Israel, that there was, and there was a certain Levite, okay? So the first thing we're going to see is there's a certain Levite. Is this the same Levite from the last chapters? The priest. Doesn't say, does it? No. Some commentators say this is the priest. Others say this is not the priest because it doesn't say. I kind of side with what the Bible says. If the Bible said, hey, that Levite priest from chapter 17 and 18, this is the guy, I'd be like, okay, cool, I'll take that. But because it doesn't, I'm taking this as a different guy. Up to your interpretation, you can work it out, okay? Cool? Yeah, Grace? Cool, okay. So every man is doing what they want to do, what is right in their eyes again, just like we read in Judges 17:6. We can see the same narrative throughout, that the Israelites doing evil before Yahweh, doing what they want to do instead of what he's asked them to do. Okay, so there's a certain Levite living on the side of Mount Ephraim. This is all real particular, because where was that Levite living? The house of Micah on the side of Mount Ephraim, right? So there's real, like, you sure this isn't the right guy? It doesn't say it, so I'm not going to say it is, but, you know. And he took a concubine out of Bethlehem, Judah. So that's two different areas. He lives in Ephraim. Bethlehem, Judah is a different tribe. He's taken a concubine from a different place, okay? But what is a concubine? Anyone know? Concubine was a sexual partner, and basically part of a man's household, but with a lower status than a wife. Okay, so it wasn't a wife, they weren't married, they were a sexual partner, usually there just to be like, let's pump out kids. Let's get some kids going here, okay? Concubines were sometimes recognized as legal partners, but would not have the same respect, would not have the same status in a home or in a society as the wife. So they just were never the same as. They were looked at potentially the same legally, but not in society. Lots of many instances in the Old Testament where prominent men have had concubines. There's been lots of them, okay? I'm going to throw out a couple of ones here, okay? Abraham, Genesis 25:6, okay? Jacob, Genesis 35:22. Caleb, 1 Chronicles 2:46. Saul, 2 Samuel 3:7. David, King David, right, in 2 Samuel 5:13. Solomon, this one's incredible, 1 Kings 11:3, but he had 300 concubines, okay? And Rehoboam in 2 Chronicles 11:21. Obviously, I'll write these all down so they come up on the video. But just so you know, this isn't the only time this has come up. There's a lot of concubines and a lot of relationships like this. However, even though it's in the Bible, we can see that God doesn't necessarily bless this relationship. He doesn't bless this kind of family life. We can read in the New Testament how God intended marriage and relationships to be. One man, one woman to become one flesh. Matthew 19:4-6. And then each man being a one-woman man. 1 Timothy 3:2. What's up?
Are there still concubines today?
Yeah. They'd be called different things. But yeah, people do that still now. Like in Eastern culture and stuff like that. There's probably some in America somewhere, I don't know. Some guys probably got some extra people on the side, but they wouldn't call them necessarily concubines. They'd probably be like their side piece. You know, whatever, I don't know. So, we know how marriage and relationships are meant to be because of the New Testament. We can see the Old Testament and we can see how they're not meant to be, okay? Verse 2, we can see that he's got a concubine, and the concubine played the whore against him. What does that even mean? Played the whore against him. Anyone got any ideas? Go for it.
Like horror, maybe? Like the worst type of thing at him? I don't know.
So you don't know this word, which is fine because you're almost 11 and that's okay. That means you're, good parenting. Thank you very much. I tried. Thanks, man. That's someone who sleeps around. That's someone who has sex with other people and sleeps around and does what they want and is promiscuous with other people, okay? So, what does that mean? Scott, what do you reckon? Played the whore. What do you think?
I think she just didn't want to be with him and took off and just went around with a bunch of other people and lived the party life and
adultery, kind of like the prodigal son kind of situation where he ran off and did whatever he wanted to do. That type of situation. That's kind of how I saw it as well. So we have this random relationship here between the Levite and the concubine. The concubine's just turned around and said, you know what? I'm out. It doesn't say why. It doesn't give context. However, this phrase, played the whore, it can mean a couple of things. I've never used this phrase before in my life, by the way. It's not one that I use often, played the whore. That's a bit weird. But the Hebrew word for all of this action is a word called zana. Z-A-N-A-H. Okay? It's a common word for describing sexual immorality. So that's where we can turn around and say adultery. Okay? Sleeping around, those type of things. So she potentially cheated on him, committed adultery. However, we can see that the Levite is doing something here that is really great, because Deuteronomy 24:4 says it's unlawful for the husband to take a cheating woman back. Unlawful. He doesn't have to do it. It would be grounds for divorce. Actually, it would be grounds for her to get stoned to death. Like, it wouldn't even be just divorce. It would be she gets killed for doing this stuff. So the Levite going to go and make this right is so much grace and mercy here already on show, which is fantastic. If only the rest of the chapter kind of stuck with this, okay? And this would be a good enough answer. Honestly, I was happy with this answer. And then I looked at the Septuagint, and the ancient Greek translation of this word was that the played the whore was that she had got emotional and angry at him. And that's why she left. So you either have that she cheated and was adulterous, or she was emotional and angry. That's the two different terms that can be used here. Whichever one you want to use, she left. Okay, he went to go and repair this relationship because she left. But she left for how long? For 4 whole months. That's what it says at the end of verse 2 there. 4 whole months. Verse 3, we can see that the husband went to go get it back. The Levite went and arose and went to go and speak friendly to her to try and make things right. To bring her again, having his servant with him, a couple of asses so she didn't have to walk. He's prepared to bring her home. Okay, you can kind of see that. The Levite could have been motivated by guilt because of the reason why she left, maybe angry. Or maybe it's because of love, even though she might have cheated on him. Whatever the reason, he loved her so much he wanted her back. He responded the right way. He went to bring the relationship back together again. And even though there was distance, he traveled and worked hard to bring the relationship back together again. And we can see, this kind of answers your question, Joshua, here, the rejoicing of the father. That actually the daughter's there and the father's like, she's been here for like 4 months. And then the husband comes up and he's like, oh, dude, you're here too, I'm so excited. And there's rejoicing, he's excited, he's happy that they're back together again, okay, like at least in his house. And we see this with the father-in-law in verse 4, the father-in-law, the damsel father retained him, kept him there, he abode with them for 3 days, so they did eat and drink and lodge there. This was custom in ancient Eastern culture, hospitality, for at least, for up to 3 days at least. Stay and be rested and be fed and be looked after, and then go. When you're ready, then leave when you want. When you want. That's the key part here, okay? We see that isn't the true case in a minute, because the father-in-law doesn't really want to let go. But he's doing the right thing. He's opening up his house and being hospitable and allowing him to come. In verse 5, there's this, the thing happens on the 4th day. They woke up early in the morning, ready to go, because what time's the best time to travel? When it's coolest, right? When the sun isn't in the middle of the sky. So they wake up early in the morning because it's coolest then. They would have packed all their stuff, arose ready to depart, and the father comes out to his son-in-law saying, oh man, no, comfort yourself again, take a seat, you look so tired. I've only just started to see you. Eat some food, drink some drink, rest yourself, you look so worn out. Why not stay here for a little while longer? Then let your heart be merry. Be comfortable here. Verse 6, be comfortable. They sit down, they ate and they drank, both of them. The damsel's father had said unto the man, be content, I pray thee. Tarry all night, wait all night, and let your heart be merry. What else could that mean? Relax. Stay, enjoy yourself. Stay put. You're a guest in my home, I don't want you to leave. At some point it gets rude to say like, I don't want to be here anymore, I'm going to leave. But after like 4 days, you could be like, yeah, I'm done. We need to get moving now, okay? You got to go back to work. I only took 3 days off. They're going to start asking questions, right? It could be a bit weird if not. But verse 7, we can see again, that when the man arose to depart, his father-in-law urged them, therefore he lodged again. What does this say about the Levite? He's easily convinced, right? Notice he's not standing up and being like, I need to get my wife home. I have a job to do. I'm a Levite. What does that even mean? I don't remember what that means. Priest. Priest where?
In the temple.
At Shiloh. At the temple, right? He's got a job to do here. I need to get home. I need to go do my job. You keeping me or keeping me away from that. There's something more important here, okay? But he doesn't do that. He doesn't stand up and say, no, I need to leave now. In verse 8, we can read, he arose early again in the morning on the 5th day. And the damsel's father said, comfort your heart, I pray thee. And they tarried until afternoon, and they did eat again. Both of them, right? Now it's the 5th day in the afternoon. They waited until afternoon. Usually, again, they would leave in the morning because of the coolness of the sun. But that word tarried, is meant, instead of it being a joyful waiting, it was more of like a reluctance. Fine, we'll wait one more time. It's kind of like he's losing his temper now. And you can tell that by the different terms that are used and different ways, the words that are used here. But it just kind of changed from a happy, loving, I'll be around, to a, fine, one last time. You ever get that? You're like, final time I'm going to wait for you. Final time this is going to happen, then I'm out. That's kind of what happened here, okay? So verse 9, the man rose up to depart, he and his concubine and servant, the father-in-law, the damsel's father, said unto him, behold, now the day draweth towards evening, I pray you tarry, you wait all night. Behold, the day groweth to an end, lodge here, that mine heart may be merry, and tomorrow get you early on your way, that thou mayest go home. He's actually trying to give a little bit of wisdom here. Because what happens if you travel at night? Can anyone remember? Good Samaritan? What happened to that guy? Bandits. People who travel at nighttime are very susceptible to bandits, to the murder, to all the bad stuff that happens because you haven't got the broad daylight to see everything anymore. You're in danger. Animals, criminals, getting lost even, whatever it could be. But the whole point is, he's actually trying to give a little bit more wisdom now, like, hey, it's too late in the afternoon. Don't do that. Don't do that. Wait until the morning and go. But it's gone to this point now that he is just ready to go. He's just ready to go. But it's the hottest part of the day. The night is slowly coming. And this phrase where it says, the day groweth to an end. That's kind of getting to dusk. The sun's starting to set. Typically, travelers on their journeys would be looking and going, okay, sun's setting, it's dusk. I'm going to set up my tent. I'm going to make sure I have my preserves out. I'm going to make sure I'm ready for the evening so I can sleep, drink, eat, and be ready to go in the morning again. It would be that time to pack down for safety, get good rest, and then be ready in the morning again. Instead, this is when they're starting to leave. It's not good. Verse 10, no, the man did not tarry. He did not wait. He rose up, departed, and came over to Jerusalem, or Jebus. That's what the old name for it, okay? And he went to Jebus, which we can read about in Joshua 15:63. This is Jerusalem. There were 2 donkeys saddled because his concubine was with him too. Jebus was the ancient name for Jerusalem prior to David's capture of the city. So when David captures the city, the name changes to Jerusalem. Okay. Verse 11. And then when they were by Jebus or Jerusalem, the day was fast spent, so it's past. The night is now upon them, okay? And there's this request from the servant. Come, I pray thee, let us turn into the city of the Jebusites and lodge in it. Why would he say no to this? Why is the answer no to this request? We should stay at Jerusalem or Jebus, right? Why would they say no to staying in this city? You can read it in verse 12, but go for it.
Because it's a foreign city and there's foreigners there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says in verse 12, we're not going into a stranger's city. A city full of strangers, a city full of pagans, because that's way too dangerous. We need to go to a place that we know, right? Which makes sense. If you weren't on donkey and you're in a car, 5 miles isn't that far, right? You could drive 5 miles pretty quickly if you wanted to. But they're on donkey, and they're walking through the desert, and they're trying to get to these places. And he thought of staying in Gibeah, a city of Israel, because of the safety with their country. They didn't want to stay with other people. Verse 13, he said, no, let's go to one of these places instead, either Gibeah or in Ramah. Gibeah was about 5 miles northeast of Jerusalem. Ramah was about 4 to 5 miles north. But both cities were in Benjamite territory. Gibeah was also central in Saul's disastrous rule in 1 Samuel chapters 9 through 14. So you can read all about how crazy that is. And all about Saul's rule there. Verse 14, they passed on, went on the way, the sun went down, and when they were by Gibeah, which belongeth to Benjamin. So here is the bad part, where it starts telling you whose territory this is, what tribe's territory, and why is it important to know whose territory it is? Because then you know who's responsible. Because then you know who's in charge and who's meant to be looking after the place. So the tribe of Benjamin are meant to be making sure this place is okay. And I think the issue here is you're going to see the true travesty that happens under their rule, that they don't care about people, they don't look after people the right way. So they went to Gibeah. Verse 15, they turned aside thither to go in and to lodge in Gibeah. And when he went in, he sat on the street in the city, for there was no man that took them into his house to lodge. So they go into the city, they sit on the street, they are homeless, basically sitting on the edge of the street, and because no one is letting them into lodge in their houses. They turned down Jerusalem because they said, Gibeah, our countrymen, is going to be better. And they get there, and there is no hospitality to be found. This reflects really poorly on the people of Gibeah, because God has commanded hospitality among the people of God. Leviticus 19, 33 to 34, Leviticus 25, 35, Matthew 25, 35, and Hebrews 13, 2. There are clear instructions here that you welcome a brother or sister into your home and you look after them, okay? When there is no hospitality between the people of God, there is a problem with the people of God, okay? When you're unwilling to welcome in a brother or sister, there's an issue there, okay? Which gets to section 2. Bing. Verses 15 or 16 through 21. An Ephraimite friend, okay? So it says this, and behold, there came an old man from his work out of the field at even, which was also of Mount Ephraim. And he sojourned in Gibeah, but the men of the place were Benjamites. And when he lifted up his eyes, he saw a wayfaring man in the street of the city. And the old man said, Whither goest thou, and whence comest thou? And he said unto him, We are passing through Bethlehem, Judah, toward the side of Mount Ephraim. From thence I am, and I went to Bethlehem, Judah, but I am now going to the house of the Lord, and there is no man that receiveth me to house. Yet there is both straw and provender for our asses, and there is bread and wine also for me and thy handmaid, and for the young man which is with thy servants. There is no want of anything. And the old man said, Peace be with thee. Howsoever, let all thy wants lie upon me, only lodge not in the street. So he brought him into his house, and gave provender unto their asses, and they washed their feet, and did drink, and did eat and drink. So we have this Ephraimite from Mount Ephraim, who recognizes this guy, who says, Where are you from? And he said, I'm from there too. He said, Get in my house. Get in. What are you doing on the street? Bring your stuff. Come on. This old man coming home from work in the evening. This man was also from Mount Ephraim, as I said, and was the only person to extend hospitality to the Levite and his concubine and his servant. The hospitality could have been offered to the Levite when he learned of his occupation. Maybe he was like, oh man, you're a priest? Or maybe it was just the fact like, dude, you're from Mount Ephraim, I grew up there too, man. We're from the same digs. We should be buds, right? Did you know this teacher at this school? You know, like that type of thing. Maybe. But the whole point is, it took a guy knowing him or knowing where he grew up to let him into his house. Hospitality was finally given that allowed him to stay somewhere safe. Verse 17, the Levite lifts up his hands, sees his eyes and sees the man, and the old man saw him and asked him a couple of questions. Where are you going? When are you going? Where are you from? Who are you? You know, those type of questions. If you're going to let someone into your house, you probably want to know a little bit about them, okay? Verse 18 is the answer. We're passing on from here, from Bethlehem, Judah, to the side of Mount Ephraim. I'm going to the house of the Lord. But the problem here is that no one has invited me to stay in their home. Remember that the house of the Lord was not at Jerusalem, but in fact at Shiloh, because of Judges 18:31. Okay, does that change? In verse 19, we read about the response from the old man to the Levite. The Levite's already told him, I've got this provision for my donkeys, for us, I've got food, I've got wine, I've got it for the servant, I've got it for me, I've got my handmaid, I've got the donkeys all set up. You don't have to provide anything, I just need a place to sleep. I just need somewhere to sleep. Typically, travelers would have a stash of extra food and supplies for the travels that they would rely on, because usually when people open up their home, it would typically be like, hey, you can crash right here in my front room, and then heading out when you're ready. And there wouldn't be like a need for a greater offering, because it wasn't like a family thing, it wasn't like a great, but it was still a hospitality thing to say, hey, come crash on my couch. Crash on my couch and then get out of here. So the guy from Mount Ephraim opened up his house to this Levite, to the concubine, to the servant, to the donkeys, to all of them. And it says that he gave them all the provisions they needed as well. Okay? And then he says this phrase, let all thy wants lie upon me. Verse 20. Howsoever, let all thy wants lie upon me, only lodge not in the street. I love this because it's kind of like that old man is just like, you know what you need? Whatever you need, let me supply it. Whatever you need, whatever issue you have, let me take care of you. And I think that's the key part about all of this. He offers, even though he doesn't know anything about these guys. He's just had a very brief conversation. But he is willing to bless strangers who need help. That's a really great heart. Really great heart. In verse 21, the old man brought the Levite, his concubine, his servant, and donkeys to his house, gave them food, washed their feet, ate and drank. What a nice way to finish this chapter. Now we have the horrible section. Horrible section. Sadly, this is not a nice way to finish this chapter. But we need to address kind of what happens next, because it's in the Bible and it is written. That means we have to look at it and think, okay. So the death of the concubine, verses 22 to 30, which is section 3. And it says this, now as they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, certain sons of Belial, beset the house round about, and beat at the door, and spake to the master of the house, the old man, saying, bring forth the man that came into thine house, that we may know him. And the man, the master of the house, went out unto them, and said unto them, nay, my brethren, nay, I pray you, do not so wickedly. Seeing that this man is come into mine house, do not this folly. Behold, here is my daughter, a maiden, and his concubine. Them I will bring out now, and humble ye them, and do with them what seemeth good unto you, but unto this man do not so vile a thing. But the men would not hearken to him. So the man took his concubine, and brought her forth unto them, and they knew her, and abused her all the night until the morning. And when the day began to spring, they let her go. Then came the woman in the dawning of the day, and fell down at the door of the man's house where her lord was, till it was light. And her lord rose up in the morning, and opened the doors out of the house, and went out to go his way. And behold, the woman, his concubine, was fallen down at the door of the house, and her hands were upon the threshold. And he said unto her, up, and let's be going. But none answered. Then a man took her up upon an ass, and the man rose and gat him unto his place. And when he had come to his house, he took a knife and laid hold of his concubine, and divided her together with her bones into 12 pieces, and sent her into all the coasts of Israel. And it was so that all that saw it said, there was no such deed done, nor seen from the day that the children of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt unto this day. Consider of it, take advice, and speak your minds. Pre-aggressive. Makes me kind of frustrated at this guy. Really frustrated at this guy. Okay. So they just got into this old man's house. They just had food. They've had their feet washed. They've been drinking. They're merry. They're happy. Oh, thank you so much for showing up and letting us be here. We're so glad you showed up. Thank you. And then they get this knocking at the door. Boom, 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 boom. The sons of Belial, surrounded the house. The sons of Belial, anyone know what Belial means? Go for it.
Mine says worthless fellows.
Boom. Sons of worthlessness. Sons of Belial. Belial also could mean wickedness, and also can refer to, and it does refer to in the Bible, as a spirit of evil or of the devil. Which you can see in this section of this chapter, that it is pure evil. That it is not a good spirit. That there is no part of this chapter that is good. Okay? Even the response from the old man, even the response to the only good person in this situation is a concubine, and she gets treated disgustingly. So Belial, wickedness. And these men surround the house, they beat on the door and on the side of the walls, and this action was like one of desperation. Like, we need to see this guy and we want to do whatever we want to him. Does this sound like similar to somewhere else in the Bible?
Sounds like Sodom and Gomorrah.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Bring out those men, those angels, remember? Those angels that came to Sodom and Gomorrah. What were they doing? Do you remember?
Message to Lot
Okay, I was saying what?
to get out.
If there is a couple of good men, right? Or
Yeah.
get out before this place burns. What were you going to say?
I was just gonna say get out of the city.
Yeah, because some hellfire is coming down. Well, not hellfire, Godfire. But you know, like the whole idea of like, this place is going to burn. Place is going to burn. But that same phrase, bring out that man that is in your house, so we may know him. When we may know him, we all know what that means, right? It's not like a, hey, let's get to know each other friendly, that's sexually. When a husband went, in fact, knew his wife, that means they slept together. There's like this homosexual pull here in this Benjamite tribe, the city of Benjamin. There's these sons of Belial who are prepared to go and do homosexual acts with this man. Why? What do you got?
Are these guys Hebrew?
What do you think?
'Cause-
They're the sons of Belial, but they're in a Benjamite city.
I don't know. They give Gentile vibes. So
They give Gentile
Yeah.
vibes. I mean,
I don't know.
some Christians give Gentile vibes
Yeah.
nowadays, though, right? So
Maybe they're like one of those people that were not kicked out by it.
maybe.
I don't know. It
Maybe.
doesn't say.
But being labeled as someone a son of wickedness or a son of evil or having the spirit of evil inside of you, that's kind of telling in itself, right? But this is the crazy part. They're living in the nation of Israel's territory, but they're acting like this. They're not wanting to know him carnally, like their human desires, right? And this was not polite, it was forceful. It's the house of Lot in Sodom in Genesis 19:5. We had huge comparisons to that right here. Okay? The men wanted to know the other man sexually. Which gets into 23, when the old man went outside to try and stop the assaults from going on. This is my guest. Don't be so wicked. He's in my house. I have to protect him. Remember what we said before? When the tent peg got put through it's because the guy was like, he was fed. He gave milk, so he'd have like drink and food, and then a place to lay down if you wanted to. Oh, I'll hide. Okay, I'll do it for you. And then it was, right, kind of went against the hospitality side a little bit. But the point being is, there's this hospitality where you're meant to protect the guest that you have. So he goes outside. I live here. This is my house. Go away. You don't get to do this. Don't be wicked. And then he says this horrible thing. Here's my daughter. Here's my daughter. She's a maiden. What does that mean? Anyone? Anyone got any ideas? A virgin. Pure. Do with her what you want. Do with her what seems good to you. That's what it says, right?
Didn't Lot do the same thing? Yeah.
Ooh. What happened to them? Genesis 19, check it out. Like, find it in your Bible and have a little read, because it doesn't turn out good for them either.
Yeah, that story was wild.
Yeah. And I'm not even just on about the fire and everything like that. That moment right there is the same type of abuse that happens. The rape, the sexual abuse, the treating horribly of other human beings. So instead of the daughter being put out there, this concubine, the man took his concubine, the Levite takes his concubine out. Think about the sadness, think about the sinfulness. the guilt, the shame that's going on here. Well, clearly not much shame, because no one's banging on the door, right? But the perverted men of Gibeah were clearly guilty, but so was the Levite in this situation, and so was the old man for not standing up here. The men of their house should have been willing to protect those ladies as much as they could. And yes, that means they probably would have had some horrible things happen to them, but they would have done what was right in that situation. What sucks about this whole situation is you see the lack of care and desire to protect and to love. The same Levite that traveled from Shiloh to go get his wife back is now saying, well, not even the wife back, concubine back. Here she is. Do whatever you want to her. Do whatever you want. And that's the tough part. Verse 24, the old man said, do with them what seemeth good unto you, but unto this man do not so vile a thing. Why is that? Is it just because he's a man? Is it just because he's a priest, a Levite? Is it just because he's from the same area as him? What do you think? Any ideas? Kind of all of the above, I think. He's a man, she's a woman. She's lesser in this situation. Take it. It's real sad. It's real sad. Verse 25, the men would not hearken unto him, so the man took his concubine, brought her forth unto them, and they knew her, abused her all the night until the morning. And when the day began to spring, they let her go. When the day began to spring. That's a pretty funny way to think about it, right? When the days started coming up, they were like, oh, let's give her back. They let her go. And why is that? You know what it is?
Because daylight.
Daylight. When people see stuff, they can see what you're doing is wrong, right?
You get caught with her.
Right? You know, someone might see me doing this. And I think that's the whole point here. It's one of those, like, you can see the planning, the plotting. We're going to do this until we get what we want out of it. But as soon as the sun starts coming up, when the dawn starts, we're out of here because we don't want to get caught. These guys knew what they're doing. So they took the concubine, they knew her sexually, abused her all the way through the night. What a nightmare. What a horrible thing for this concubine. What a poor lady to be put through all of this. And then they let her go when the morning came. Every person in this situation was guilty except the concubine. She was the one that was used for pleasure, desire, sinfulness, as an object, as a complete object. Notice though, as you read through the Bible and you get to the book of Hosea, this time of wickedness right here is looked back on by Israel later in the Bible. Hosea 9:9 and Hosea 10:9. This time is not forgotten. It is not forgotten. It is like a stain in their timeline. Hosea 9:9, Hosea 10:9. Check them out if you can. And give them a read, and it points back to this point right here. Remember when. And they should remember. They should remember when, because it's disgusting, Verse 26, we can read, the woman comes in the dawning of the day and fell down at the door of the man's house where the Lord was till it was light. Imagine that. She's so weak. She's had all this horrible stuff happen to her. She's able to get back to the house. And she falls down. She falls down, collapsed in the doorway. Sad and lonely time. There's this picture here, kind of like, it's a bad picture, but here's the lady here on the doorway, her hand touching the threshold, is in so close to safety, so close to getting into the doorway, but she couldn't quite make it. And there's the Lord looking over her, ready to start his day. The Levite got up in the morning, verse 27, opened the doors of the house, went to go about his business, saw the lady in the threshold of the house, with her hands clinging to the threshold. I think that's the tough part right here. The hands are upon it, like, let me in, I need help. No one opened those doors. And this is the sad part. This is the disgusting part, really. Verse 28, I hate this. And he said unto her, up, let's be going. Just the health and medical side of things, a person who's been raped, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, would not be able to do much. Like, there's been studies that have been done by people who have been tortured, raped, captured, kidnapped, all those things, and had these horrible things, they've not been able to compute anything after that for a long time. That PTSD. So for him just to turn around and act like it's another day of saying, "Come on up, you get, let's go." That's horrific. That's disgusting. It's such a sad thing to think about here. And again, we don't know how many of the sons of Belial there were. But to know that it happened all night was a horrible, horrible thing. There's a heartlessness, a clear demonstration of heartlessness of the Levite towards his concubine. Again, the same concubine that he went to go and bring home. The same concubine that he was happy to eat at the father-in-law's house, share food, stay there, and then go. That same concubine that was ready to try to build this relationship, and now his concubine is dead. Or dying on the doorstep here. He took her up on the donkey, got going with his journey. And right now in verse 28, it's unclear if the concubine was dead or not, because she didn't respond. And she probably passed. But we just don't know again. Verse 29, however, we can read that when he came to his house, he took a knife, laid hold on his concubine, divided her together with her bones into 12 pieces, and sent her into all the coasts of Israel. So she was dead by the time he returns to his house. And then he cuts her up into 12 pieces. And this is weird. This is a weird thing, right? Here's this map. So here's the journey. Obviously, he went from here to go pick her up and then come back again. And this is an incredible moment where you think he could just put her to rest. But instead he's like, I'm going to use her as an example, as a message. And he cuts her up into 12. Why 12?
Because there's 12 tribes. But only 11 got land, so why is he cutting 12?
Probably to keep one where he is as well. The Levites got the temple, right? So they didn't get land, but they got the temple. But he wanted every single tribe to know. And this says, the Levite does this weird thing, and he goes to his house, took a knife, cut her up, divided her with the bones into 12 pieces, sending her to all the coasts of Israel. And a horrible way to deliver a message. Horrible way. But the message was sent, and it was sent to prompt others to action, to righteousness, okay? And it's tragic because he didn't show the same concern earlier. Now she's dead. Now she's on the table, and he's hacked her up, and he's like, I'm going to send out this message so people don't let this happen again. Where was this drive earlier on? Where was the protect your wife or person earlier on? Where was the men, sacrifice, love, look after, protect, be there earlier on? Instead, he gets home and then he's all brave. Not the type of guy I want to hang around with. I don't have time for people like that. Sounds terrible, but it's the truth. Okay. Verse 30. It says, and it was so that all that saw it said, there was no such deed done, nor seen from the day that the children of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt unto this day. Consider of it, take advice, and speak your minds. We can see in chapter 20, coming up, the results of the message being sent out. Okay? But this is the rest of these guys saying, hey, we see this, we see it, and then we've seen that there's been no deed like this done before. No one's done something like this before since we've come out of the land of Egypt. So from Exodus to now, there has been sin. There has been lawlessness. There's been direct disobedience. But can you think of an incident like this where a person has been raped, abused, and then killed by these horrible people? Has that happened? There's been war. Right? There's been taunting and mocking and people being killed by stones and, all the other stuff has happened, but nothing this dark. Nothing this horrible. And that's what they're saying here. No deed done nor seen from the day that the children of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt unto this day. Until now. Like, this is the worst thing they've seen. Consider of it. Think about it. Take advice. Maybe try to not do it. Take advice to stay away from this type of stuff. And speak your minds about it. Tell the truth. Say what you think about this situation. There's a suggestion that happened as well that the Levite, as he sent out the body parts to the different tribes, that he sent a message with it as well. The truth of the matter is, though, whether there's a message or not, if they had stayed in Jerusalem, they may have been safe. If they had left at a different time of the day, maybe a little earlier, this situation could have been different. And if the Levite would have stood for righteousness, this concubine could have been potentially saved. Lots of ifs and could have beens. But he chose to not have a backbone in this situation and chose his person to take the beating instead of him. That's a really sad way to end the chapter, but that's how it reads to me. You know? I got 3 final thoughts for you here. Obey the law of God. The reason why I say is that concubines were not something that God really allowed. You know, he said he blessed a right relationship, a right marriage, and things like that. He's called us to be one person with one person, not with many. So keep God's laws, obey his commandments, do what the Bible says, because it's there for a reason. And even when you think about like going to college and having a fun time, all the partying and stuff like that, stand for righteousness in those situations. You may be the one that gets hurt, but you may save someone else's life doing it instead. Grace, you're a lady. Don't get hurt. Let a dude do it instead, right? Okay. Second one, our carnal desires for things of this world are tempting. Our carnal desires, our heart's desire of, I want this. I'm a caveman and I need to eat my meat and I want my woman and I wanted this. No, that's not the way that things are meant to be. You may think that's the right way to do things, but that's not. Your carnal desires are not the desires of what God has for you. See what God has for you instead. Get rid of those things carnal and cling to things righteous. Okay? God has got better for you. Do not feed the desires of the flesh. And the third one here, stand for what God stands up for. Stand for justice. Stand for truth. Stand for what God stands for, because that's the right thing to stand for. If we're not standing for what's right, then what are we standing for? For sin. That's as simple as it needs to be. Guys, that's Judges 19.